Isaiah Brooks straightened his tie one last time before his first day as police chief, not knowing that 12 hours later, he'd be reviewing the paperwork from his own arrest. Hey beautiful people, welcome home. Ready to see how one woman's courage changed a man's destiny? Subscribe and drop a comment. What would you risk for justice? Because tomorrow I've got another life-changing story waiting. Let's start this incredible tale. The bathroom mirror reflected 15 years of careful discipline back at Isaiah Brooks. At 38, his shoulders still carried the military bearing that had served him well through every rank of the Metropolitan Police Department. Tonight, though, something felt different. Tomorrow would mark his first day as police chief, the youngest in the city's history, and only the second black man to hold the position. He adjusted his collar again, a nervous habit his late mother would have teased him about. "Stop fidgeting, baby. You earned this," he whispered to his reflection, using her voice to calm the storm of anticipation in his chest. The apartment around him told the story of a man who'd learned to live carefully. Every book on the shelves was arranged with precision, every commendation and certificate hung at perfect angles. The only chaos came from the moving boxes scattered across the living room. Tomorrow's promotion meant relocating to the chief's residence across town. Isaiah's phone buzzed. A text from his mentor, retired Chief Williams. "Remember son, change comes slow, but it comes. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good." He smiled, pocketing the device. Williams had warned him about the weight of the badge, how it could either crush you or forge you into something stronger. Isaiah had chosen strength, rising through the ranks despite the whispered doubts, the subtle challenges to his authority, the way some colleagues' eyes never quite met his during meetings. But tomorrow all of that would shift. Tomorrow he'd sit in the corner office where policy was made, where justice took shape. His stomach growled, reminding him he'd been too nervous to eat dinner. The Chinese place down the street had already closed, but the 24-hour gas station on Maple Avenue would have something. A quiet drive might settle his nerves anyway. As Isaiah grabbed his keys, he caught sight of his father's photo on the mantel, Sergeant Robert Brooks, killed in the line of duty when Isaiah was 16. "Wish you could see this, Pops," he murmured. The proud smile in the photograph seemed to say he already did. 3 miles across town, Lily Chen sat in her Honda Civic in the hospital parking lot, engine off, head tilted back against the headrest, her nursing scrubs stuck to her skin, damp with the exhaustion that came from 12 hours of holding other people's pain. Tonight had been particularly brutal. A teenager, barely older than her brother Kevin, had been brought in after a police encounter gone wrong. The boy's mother had gripped Lily's hand with desperate strength, eyes wide with the kind of fear that came from loving someone the world seemed determined to misunderstand. "Please," the woman had whispered, "please don't let them hurt him anymore." Lily had seen that same fear in her own mother's eyes 2 years ago when Kevin was arrested. Wrongfully, it turned out, but not before 6 months in county jail destroyed his scholarship, his confidence, and his faith in the system their immigrant parents had taught them to respect. She rubbed her temples, trying to massage away the headache that had been building all evening. The dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m. Another night shift complete. Another collection of wounds witnessed, another step deeper into the cynicism that had been eating at her soul since Kevin's arrest. Her phone lit up with a text from her roommate, "Thai food in fridge if you're hungry. Also mom called, she wants to know when you're coming to dinner this weekend." Lily smiled despite her exhaustion. Her mother's cure for everything was family dinner, as if enough dumplings and concerned conversation could heal whatever ailed the world. Maybe she was right. Maybe Lily had been carrying too much weight, caring too much about injustices she couldn't fix. Her gas gauge showed nearly empty. She'd been putting off the stop all week, but couldn't make it home now. The station on Maple Avenue was well lit, and usually quiet at this hour, a safe place to fuel up and grab something to eat, before facing another sleepless night. As she started the engine, a memory surfaced unbidden. Kevin at 18, proud in his graduation cap, dreams of pre-law shining in his eyes. Before the arrest, before the system they'd been taught to trust, had chewed him up and spit him out, leaving him bitter and working double shifts at a warehouse instead of studying constitutional law. One person can't change the whole system, she reminded herself, pulling out of the parking lot. It was something she'd been telling herself a lot lately, a mantra that was supposed to provide comfort but instead felt more like surrender. The streets were quiet, most of the city already asleep and dreaming. Lily drove through the amber glow of streetlights, past closed shops and empty intersections, toward the bright beacon of the 24-hour gas station, where she'd grab an energy drink and maybe a sandwich that would taste like cardboard but fill the hollow space in her stomach. She had no way of knowing that in 15 minutes her life would intersect with a stranger's in a way that would challenge everything she'd convinced herself to accept about justice, dignity, and the possibility that one person actually could make a difference. The gas station's fluorescent lights grew larger in her windshield as she approached, unaware that destiny was pumping gas at station number 3. What do you think shapes someone's faith in justice, their experiences, or their choices? Share your thoughts in the comments below as we dive deeper into Isaiah and Lily's story. The gas station hummed with the white noise of fluorescent lights and distant traffic. Isaiah pulled up to pump 3, the furthest from the building, old habits from years of tactical training. Always keep your back covered. Always have an exit route. He stepped out into the cool night air, his casual jeans and polo shirt a deliberate choice. Tomorrow he'd wear the uniform that commanded respect, but tonight he just wanted to be a regular person buying gas and a late dinner. The pump clicked on, numbers rolling past in steady rhythm. Isaiah glanced around the lot, empty except for a small Honda pulling in 2 pumps over. He nodded politely to the Asian woman who got out, recognizing the bone-deep exhaustion in her movements. Healthcare worker, he guessed. He'd seen that particular brand of tiredness on his sister's face during her residency. Inside the station, Isaiah grabbed a turkey sandwich and a bottle of water, making small talk with the young clerk about the unseasonably warm October weather. The kid, maybe 19, with earnest eyes and a name tag reading Devon, seemed nervous around him, and Isaiah found himself automatically softening his voice, making himself smaller. Another old habit. "You have a good night now," Isaiah said, accepting his change with a genuine smile. "Yes sir, you too sir." The politeness felt forced, and Isaiah caught something in the boy's expression, a flicker of recognition maybe, or fear, but he pushed the thought away. Tomorrow's nerves were making him paranoid. Outside, he'd just finished pumping gas when the squad car pulled in fast, lights flashing but no sirens. Isaiah's training kicked in immediately. 2 officers, aggressive approach, hands near weapons. His stomach dropped as he recognized the signs of a high-risk stop. But they were looking at him. "Sir, step away from the vehicle with your hands visible," Officer Martinez called out, his voice carrying the sharp edge of someone expecting resistance. Isaiah's first instinct was to identify himself, but 15 years on the force had taught him that sudden movements and quick explanations could escalate situations. He raised his hand slowly, mind racing through possibilities. Had someone called in a suspicious person? A robbery? His car matched some bolo description. "Officers, I'm going to reach slowly for my identification," he said, voice calm and measured. "I'm Commander Isaiah Brooks, Metro PD." "Sure you are." Officer Thompson laughed, a bitter sound that made Isaiah's chest tighten. "And I'm the mayor. Turn around and put your hands on the car." The disbelief in Thompson's voice hit Isaiah like a physical blow. He'd heard that tone before, the automatic dismissal, the assumption that a black man couldn't possibly be who he claimed to be. "Officers, please, my badge and ID are in my back pocket. If you'll just let me." "Hands on the car now," Martinez shouted, hand moving to his weapon. Isaiah felt the familiar burn of humiliation rise in his throat, but he complied. The cold metal of his car pressed against his palms as he leaned forward, assuming the position he'd seen 1,000 suspects take. Never imagined he'd feel the vulnerability from this side. Thompson's hands were rough as they patted him down, searching pockets with unnecessary force. The sandwich he'd just bought fell to the asphalt wrapper, tearing open. "Metro PD badge," Thompson announced, pulling Isaiah's credentials from his wallet. "Probably stolen." "Check the photo," Isaiah said quietly, still facing the car. "Check the badge number against the database." But they weren't listening. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists with metallic finality, too tight, cutting into skin. Isaiah closed his eyes and forced his breathing to stay steady. "Don't react. Don't give them a reason to escalate. Stay calm until this gets sorted out." "Isaiah Brooks," Martinez read from the ID. "Says here you're some kind of commander, right?" The skepticism was acid in his voice. "I am," Isaiah said, the words coming out quieter than he intended. "I'm supposed to start as chief tomorrow morning. You can call Captain Williams, he'll verify." "Man, listen to this guy." Thompson chuckled to his partner. "Thinks he's gonna be police chief. The fantasies these people come up with." These people. The phrase hit Isaiah like a slap, and for a moment, his careful control wavered. 15 years of service, 15 years of proving himself, and he was still just these people to officers who should have been his colleagues. 20 feet away, Lily had frozen with her gas pump in her hand, watching the scene unfold with growing horror. She'd seen enough police encounters at the hospital to know when things were going wrong, and everything about this felt wrong. The man, tall, dignified, speaking with quiet authority, even as they cuffed him, didn't fit any profile of criminal behavior she'd ever witnessed. His posture screamed law enforcement even in civilian clothes, the way he positioned himself, the measured tone of his voice, the automatic compliance that came from someone who understood police procedure from the inside. And yet the officers were treating him like a common criminal, their dismissal so casual it made her stomach turn. She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers, thumb hovering over the camera app. Her brother's voice echoed in her memory. "If you see something, record it. It's the only protection we have." The video started rolling just as Thompson yanked Isaiah away from the car, the movement unnecessarily violent. Lily could see the man's jaw clench, the only sign of his inner struggle to maintain composure. "What's the charge, officers?" Isaiah asked, his voice still level despite the circumstances. "Suspicious activity," Martinez replied. "Loitering, possible stolen vehicle, possible stolen badge. This is my car. You can run the plates, and that's my badge. Earned over 15 years of service to this department." "We'll sort all that out at the station," Thompson said, guiding Isaiah toward their squad car. "Right now you're coming with us." As they pushed Isaiah's head down to put him in the back seat, Lily caught sight of his face in her phone's screen, the dignity there, the careful control, the quiet devastation of a man watching his character be dismissed because of his skin color. It was Kevin all over again, but somehow worse because this man clearly belonged to the very system that was now rejecting him. The squad car pulled away, leaving Isaiah's car at the pump with the door still open, his torn sandwich wrapper scattered across the asphalt like debris from a life suddenly shattered. Lily stood in the fluorescent glow, phone still recording the empty space where injustice had just played out. Her hands were shaking, her heart pounding with the familiar rage that came from witnessing powerlessness in the face of power. But this time she had evidence. This time maybe something could be done. She saved the video to her cloud storage, then called 911 to report a potentially wrongful arrest, her voice stronger than she'd expected. As she drove home, she couldn't shake the image of the man's face, the quiet strength, the heartbreaking dignity of someone who dedicated his life to serving a system that had just failed him completely. Neither of them knew that in 8 hours they'd meet again under circumstances that would change both their lives forever. The holding cell smelled of industrial disinfectant and human desperation. Isaiah sat on the narrow bench, back straight, hands folded in his lap, a meditation pose his father had taught him years ago. When the world tries to break you down, son, you sit up straighter. That's how they know they haven't won. But tonight the lessons felt harder to hold on to. The booking process had been a masterclass in institutional humiliation, fingerprints like he was a common criminal, mugshots with numbers across his chest, personal effects sealed in a manila envelope, including the badge he'd carried for 15 years, treated like evidence in some crime he hadn't committed. Sergeant Morrison, the night desk supervisor, had recognized him immediately. The shock in the man's eyes had been almost worth the embarrassment of the situation. "Commander Brooks, what the hell? I mean, sir, there's been some kind of mistake." "No mistake from my end, Sergeant," Isaiah had replied quietly. "Martinez and Thompson arrested me at the Maple Avenue station. Suspicious activity, they said." Morrison's face had gone through several shades of red as he processed the implications. "Sir, I can have you released immediately. This is unacceptable. By the book, Morrison, process me like any other arrest. If there's going to be an investigation, it needs to be clean." Even now, 3 hours later, Isaiah wasn't sure why he'd insisted on proper procedure. Maybe because taking the easy way out felt like admitting defeat. Maybe because he wanted a complete record of what had happened. Or maybe because some part of him needed to experience the system from this side, to understand what every other man who looked like him had been trying to tell him for years. The cell door clanged open. Morrison stood there with a clipboard and deep shame in his eyes. "Commander, the paperwork's ready, you can go." Isaiah stood slowly, every muscle stiff from the narrow bench. "What did the investigation show?" "Your story checks out completely, sir. Badge is legitimate, car registration matches, no warrants, no priors. Martinez and Thompson." Morrison paused, searching for diplomatic words. "They made assumptions." "Assumptions?" Isaiah almost smiled at the euphemism. "What's the protocol here, Sergeant?" "Internal Affairs will review it, sir. But with you being—" Morrison stopped himself. "With me being what?" "With you being the new chief, sir. This is above my pay grade." The irony wasn't lost on Isaiah. Tomorrow he'd be reviewing his own arrest file from the other side of the system. The thought should have been satisfying justice from a position of power. Instead, it just felt exhausting. As he collected his personal effects, Isaiah caught sight of himself in the booking room's mirror. Same face, same dignity, but something in his eyes had changed. Some innocence about his place in the world had died tonight between the handcuffs and the holding cell. His phone showed 17 missed calls. Word was already spreading through the department. He ignored them all and called an Uber, not trusting himself to drive just yet. 3 miles away, Lily paced her apartment like a caged animal, her phone clutched in her hand, the video replay button worn smooth from her thumb. She'd watched the footage dozens of times now, each viewing making her more certain of what she'd witnessed and more uncertain about what to do with it. The dignity in the man's posture, the casual cruelty in the officer's dismissal, the moment when he'd said he was supposed to start as chief, a claim that had seemed so outlandish she'd almost doubted it herself. But then she'd Googled Metro PD new police chief and found the press release from last week. Commander Isaiah Brooks, 15-year veteran, youngest chief in department history. The photograph matched perfectly. Same strong jawline, same intelligent eyes, same quiet authority that had been so obvious even in handcuffs. Her roommate Sophie emerged from her bedroom, drawn by the sound of pacing. "Lily, it's 2 in the morning. What's wrong?" "I witnessed something tonight," Lily said, still staring at her phone screen. "Something terrible." Sophie settled onto the couch, instantly alert. Years of friendship had taught her to recognize when Lily was wrestling with something bigger than herself. "Tell me." The story poured out: the gas station, the arrest, the casual dismissal of a decorated officer's identity based solely on the color of his skin. When Lily finished, Sophie was quiet for a long moment. "Do you have the recording?" Lily nodded, starting the video again. They watched together in silence as dignity met injustice under fluorescent lights. "This is huge," Sophie whispered. "The new police chief gets arrested by his own officers the night before he takes office. This could change everything." "Or nothing," Lily said bitterly. "You think this is the first time something like this has happened? How many videos do we see every week? How many times do we say this will be different?" But even as she spoke the words, Lily knew tonight felt different. Maybe it was the man's composure under pressure. Maybe it was the timing, so perfectly ironic it felt like the universe demanding attention. Or maybe it was just that she was tired of being a passive observer in her own life. "Kevin's case is different from this," Sophie said gently. "Is it?" Lily's voice cracked. "Both times officers saw a person of color and immediately assumed the worst. Both times the system failed before it even tried to work." She slumped onto the couch beside her friend, suddenly drained. "I don't know if I can go through it again, Soph. The depositions, the lawyers, the way they make you feel like you're the one on trial for daring to question their judgment. But this time you have evidence. Clear, unambiguous evidence." Lily looked at her phone again. The video was damning, no way to spin it as anything other than racial profiling. But she'd learned that evidence wasn't always enough when it went against the blue wall of silence. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Can't sleep thinking about you. Remember, doing nothing is also a choice." The message felt like a sign. Her mother, who'd immigrated with nothing but hope and determination, who'd taught her children that staying silent in the face of injustice made you complicit in it. But there was another voice in her head too, her brother's bitter laugh when she'd suggested that speaking up could make a difference. "The system isn't broken, Lily, it's working exactly as designed." "I need to sleep on it," she said finally, though she knew sleep wouldn't come tonight. Sophie squeezed her hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." After her roommate went back to bed, Lily stood at her window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Isaiah Brooks was probably awake too, wrestling with his own impossible choices. Tomorrow he'd take an oath to serve and protect the same community that had just watched him be humiliated by his own officers. How did someone find the strength to keep believing in a system that had failed them so publicly? Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert. New Metro PD chief to begin tomorrow amid high expectations for reform. The article included the same photo she'd found earlier, but now she could see something in Isaiah's eyes that the professional headshot couldn't quite hide, a wariness that came from knowing the world would always be ready to see him as a threat first and a human being second. But there was hope there too, determination, the kind of quiet strength that could bend without breaking. Lily made her decision. She opened her contacts and scrolled to Metro PD non-emergency line, then hesitated. Once she made this call, there would be no taking it back. She'd be choosing involvement over safety, action over apathy. The phone rang twice before a tired voice answered. "Metro PD, how can I help you?" "I'd like to report a case of potential police misconduct," Lily said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "I have video evidence of what appears to be racial profiling during an arrest tonight at the Maple Avenue gas station. I'll transfer you to internal affairs, ma'am." As she waited on hold, Lily felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of the cynicism that had been choking her hope for 2 years. Maybe this wouldn't change everything. Maybe the system would close ranks and protect its own like it always did. But for the first time since Kevin's arrest, she was choosing to fight instead of surrender. Have you ever witnessed injustice and struggled with whether to speak up? What do you think gives people the courage to act when it matters most? Share your thoughts below. Isaiah stood in the precinct parking lot at 7:45 a.m., staring up at the building that had been his professional home for 15 years. Today it felt different, not like coming home, but like walking into enemy territory. His dress uniform was immaculate, every crease sharp enough to cut glass. The silver stars on his collar felt heavier than they should have, weighted with the knowledge of what his own officers were capable of. He'd gotten 3 hours of sleep, fueled by coffee and the grim determination to show up despite everything. Captain Rodriguez was waiting in the lobby, his weathered face creased with embarrassment and something that might have been respect. "Chief Brooks," he said formally, extending a hand. "I heard about last night. I'm sorry." Isaiah shook the offered hand, noting how other officers in the lobby had gone quiet, pretending not to watch while hanging on every word. "Thank you, Captain. Has Internal Affairs begun their investigation? Detective Santos is handling it personally. She's thorough." They walked toward the elevator, passing clusters of officers who offered tentative nods and uncomfortable smiles. Isaiah could feel the weight of their stares, the whispered conversations that would follow his wake. By now everyone knew. By now the story had taken on a life of its own. "The morning briefing is ready, whenever you are, sir," Rodriguez said as they stepped into the elevator. "And your first official case review is scheduled for 9 o'clock. "What case?" Rodriguez's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "All overnight arrests, sir, standard protocol for new administration." The elevator climbed slowly, each floor marking another step into the surreal reality of reviewing his own arrest file. Isaiah wondered if this was what Alice felt like tumbling down the rabbit hole, everything familiar but fundamentally wrong. The Internal Affairs Office buzzed with quiet activity. Detective Carmen Santos had been on the force for 12 years and had seen enough misconduct cases to know when something stank. This one reeked. She was reviewing the initial report when her assistant knocked. "Detective, there's a witness here about the Brooks arrest. Says she has video evidence." Santos looked up sharply. "Send her in." Lily entered the small office carrying a manila folder and the weight of a sleepless night. She'd changed out of her scrubs into professional clothes, a navy blazer and slacks that made her feel more confident than she actually was. "Miss Chen, is it?" Santos gestured to a chair. "I understand you witnessed the arrest last night." "Yes, ma'am." Lily placed her folder on the desk. "I have video footage of the entire encounter, and I think there's something you need to know about the timeline." For the next 20 minutes, Lily walked Santos through everything: the man's obvious composure and training, the officer's dismissive attitude, the casual cruelty of their assumptions. When she showed the video, Santos watched in silence, her expression growing darker with each passing second. "This is damning," Santos said finally. "But I have to ask, why come forward? A lot of people would have just walked away." Lily thought of Kevin, of her mother's text, of the quiet dignity she'd witnessed under fluorescent lights. "Because doing nothing is also a choice," she said. "And I'm tired of making that choice." Santos nodded approvingly. "I'll need you to give a formal statement. The timing is complicated. Commander Brooks, Chief Brooks, now he's upstairs right now." "He's here?" Lily felt her heart skip. "Now?" "First day on the job. He insisted on keeping his schedule despite—" Santos gestured at the case file. "Despite all this." Something in the detective's tone made Lily look closer. There was admiration there, mixed with disbelief. "You think he's remarkable," Lily said. "Not really a question. I think any man who can spend the night in holding and still show up to do the job the next day is either remarkable or crazy. Maybe both." The chief's office felt like a museum exhibit of law enforcement history. Plaques and commendations from previous chiefs lined the walls, along with photos of community events and award ceremonies. Isaiah sat behind the massive oak desk, trying to make the space feel like his own. Captain Rodriguez entered with a stack of files. Overnight arrests, Chief. 3 domestic disturbances, 1 DUI, 1 burglary suspect, and, he paused, 1 arrest for suspicious activity. Isaiah's file was thinner than the others. Not much paperwork when the charges were ultimately unfounded, but seeing his own name typed on the report header felt like an out-of-body experience. "What's the status on the internal affairs investigation?" Isaiah asked, opening the file with steady hands. "Detective Santos is interviewing a witness now, someone who recorded the encounter." Isaiah looked up sharply. Someone had filmed his humiliation? The thought should have been mortifying, but instead he felt a strange sense of relief. Evidence, truth that couldn't be explained away or buried in departmental politics. "I want to meet this witness." Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, given your involvement in the case, it might be better." "Captain." Isaiah's voice carried the quiet authority that had earned him every promotion. "Someone stood up for me when they didn't have to. The least I can do is thank them personally." Before Rodriguez could respond, Detective Santos knocked on the door. "Chief, I have Miss Chen here to give her statement. She's the witness I mentioned." "Send her in." The door opened, and Lily entered the office that seemed to dwarf everything except the man behind the desk. In uniform, with the weight of authority settling around his shoulders, he looked different than he had in handcuffs. But those eyes, intelligent, careful, carrying depths of experience, those were exactly the same. "Miss Chen." Isaiah rose, extending his hand. "I understand I owe you a debt of gratitude." Lily shook his hand, noting the strength in his grip and the careful control in his voice. Up close, she could see the exhaustion he was hiding, the cost of maintaining dignity under impossible circumstances. "You don't owe me anything, Chief Brooks. I just did what anyone should have done." "But most people wouldn't have," Isaiah said quietly. "Please, have a seat." As Lily settled into the chair across from his desk, she was struck by the surreal nature of the moment. 24 hours ago, she'd been a burned-out nurse driving home from another difficult shift. Now she was sitting in the police chief's office, having inserted herself into a story much larger than her own life. "Detective Santos tells me you have video evidence," Isaiah continued. "Yes, sir. I recorded the encounter because," Lily paused, searching for the right words, "because my brother was wrongfully arrested 2 years ago, and I know how quickly these situations can be misrepresented later." Something shifted in Isaiah's expression, understanding maybe, or shared pain. "I'm sorry about your brother. The system failed him." "The system failed you too, Chief. The difference is you have the power to do something about it." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility and challenge. Isaiah leaned back in his chair, studying this woman who'd chosen courage over comfort, involvement over safety. "Miss Chen, I have to ask, what do you want to see come from this? What would justice look like to you?" Lily had been preparing for this question all night, but now, sitting across from the man who'd maintained his dignity even in handcuffs, the answer felt more complex. "I want Officers Martinez and Thompson to understand that their assumptions have consequences. I want other officers to see that this behavior won't be tolerated, not even from their colleagues." She paused. "And I want you to know that not everyone in this city sees you as a threat. Some of us see you as hope." The confession surprised them both. Lily felt heat rise in her cheeks, while Isaiah felt something loosen in his chest, a knot of isolation he hadn't even realized was there. "Miss Chen," he said carefully, "would you be willing to participate in the formal investigation? It could be difficult. Martinez and Thompson will have lawyers, and they'll try to discredit both your testimony and the video evidence." "I expected that." Lily's voice was steadier than she felt. "I've been through this before with my brother's case. I know what I'm signing up for." Isaiah nodded, but his expression had grown thoughtful. "What happened with your brother's case, if you don't mind me asking?" 6 months in county jail before the charges were dropped. Lost his scholarship, lost his faith in justice. He's working double shifts at a warehouse now instead of studying law like he planned. The pain in her voice was unmistakable, and Isaiah felt the familiar burn of systemic failure, another bright future dimmed by the very institution he'd sworn to serve. "I'm sorry," he said again, meaning it more than any official condolence he'd ever offered. "Don't be sorry," Lily said, leaning forward slightly. "Be different. Be the change that makes stories like Kevin's, like yours, impossible." Their eyes met across the desk, and in that moment something fundamental shifted. This wasn't just about an investigation anymore, or even about justice for one wrongful arrest. This was about two people who'd been wounded by the same system, choosing to believe it could be healed. "Miss Chen," Isaiah said, "I think this is the beginning of a very important partnership." "Lily," she corrected with a small smile. "And I hope you're right, Chief Brooks." "Isaiah," he replied, returning the smile, "and I have a feeling we're going to change more than just this department." Outside the office, Detective Santos finished typing her notes and smiled to herself. In 12 years of police work, she'd learned to recognize the moments when everything pivoted towards something better. This felt like one of those moments. The intercom buzzed. "Chief? You have the morning briefing in 5 minutes." Isaiah looked at Lily, who was gathering her purse to leave. "Miss Chen, Lily, would you mind staying for the briefing? I think it's important for the department to meet the woman who's holding us accountable." Lily hesitated. This was further than she'd planned to go, deeper into a world she'd only observed from the outside. But something in Isaiah's eyes, hope mixed with determination, made the decision for her. "I'd be honored, Chief." As they walked toward the briefing room together, both of them could feel the weight of curious stares and whispered conversations. By tomorrow, everyone would know that the new chief and the witness to his arrest were allies. It was a dangerous position for both of them. It was also the beginning of something that could reshape everything they thought they knew about justice, courage, and the possibility of love growing in the most unexpected places. 3 days after their first meeting, Isaiah found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, leaving work at a reasonable hour. Detective Santos had assured him the internal affairs investigation was proceeding smoothly, with Lily's video evidence making the case ironclad. But that wasn't why he'd been thinking about her constantly. It was her words that haunted him. "Some of us see you as hope." When was the last time someone had seen him as anything other than a uniform, a rank, or a problem to be managed? His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Lily. Detective Santos gave me your number. Would you like to get coffee? I think we should talk about what comes next." Isaiah stared at the message longer than necessary. What comes next? In investigation terms, it probably meant coordination on testimony and evidence, but something in his chest hoped it meant more. He texted back, "There's a cafe on 5th Street, near the university. Maya's meet you there in 20. Her response came quickly, "See you there." Maya's cafe occupied the ground floor of a converted brownstone, its exposed brick walls lined with local art and mismatched furniture that somehow created perfect harmony. Isaiah arrived first, choosing a corner table that gave him clear sightlines to both entrances, old habits from 15 years of staying alert. When Lily walked in, she looked different than she had in the sterile precinct environment. Jeans and a soft sweater replaced the professional blazer, and her hair fell loose around her shoulders. She looked younger, more vulnerable, and Isaiah felt his carefully maintained professional distance waver. "Chief," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Isaiah," he corrected gently. "We're off duty here." She smiled, and he noticed the way it transformed her entire face. "Then I'm just Lily. No more Miss Chen." They ordered coffee, black for him, something elaborate with cinnamon for her, and settled into the kind of awkward silence that comes when two people realize they know each other's worst moments, but nothing about their daily lives. "So," Lily said finally, "this is strange." "Which part?" "The cafe, the circumstances, or the fact that we're sitting here like normal people instead of cop and witness? All of it, she laughed, a sound that was lighter than he'd expected. 3 days ago, I was just a nurse who worked too many double shifts and had given up on the idea that one person could make a difference. Now I'm having coffee with the police chief, discussing how to reform a system that's been broken longer than either of us has been alive. Isaiah studied her face, noting the exhaustion that seemed permanently etched around her eyes. Tell me about Kevin, your brother, if you're comfortable sharing. Lily's expression shifted, pain flickering across her features before she composed herself. Kevin was the golden child. Perfect grades, debate team captain, accepted to Princeton on a full scholarship for pre-law. He wanted to be a civil rights attorney, said he was going to change the world one case at a time. She paused to sip her coffee, gathering strength for the harder parts of the story. 2 years ago, he was walking home from his job at the campus bookstore. It was around 10 p.m., and he took a shortcut through the park. 2 officers saw a black man in a hoodie and decided he looked suspicious. They claimed he matched the description of someone who'd been breaking into cars. Isaiah felt his jaw clench. He'd heard variations of this story too many times. The description was black male, medium height, dark clothing, Lily continued, her voice taking on the flat tone people use when recounting trauma. It could have described half the men in the city, but it was enough. What happened? They tackled him, broke his wrist when he tried to show them his student ID, charged him with resisting arrest, assault on an officer, and possession with intent to distribute because he had his ADHD medication in an unmarked pill container. Lily's hands tightened around her coffee mug. The assault charge came from the fact that his blood got on one of the officers' uniforms when they broke his nose. Isaiah closed his eyes briefly. The casual brutality of it, the way the system had twisted Kevin's victimization into criminality, was sickeningly familiar. 6 months, he asked. 6 months in county. Princeton rescinded the scholarship, can't have convicted felons in their program, even pending cases. By the time all charges were dropped for lack of evidence, Kevin had lost everything. His spot at Princeton was gone, his faith in justice was destroyed, and he couldn't even look at a police officer without having panic attacks. Where is he now? Working at a warehouse, pulling night shifts. He makes enough to pay rent and support our parents, but he's hollow. Like they didn't just break his wrist that night, they broke his spirit. Lily's voice cracked slightly. My brother was going to change the world, Isaiah. Now he can barely trust it not to destroy him again. Isaiah reached across the table, covering her hand with his. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through both of them. Warm, electric, entirely inappropriate for a professional relationship but impossible to ignore. I'm sorry, he said, and the inadequacy of the words burned in his throat. Don't apologize, just be different, be the chief who makes sure Kevin's story becomes impossible to repeat. They sat in silence for a moment, his hand still covering hers, both of them processing the weight of expectation and possibility. My turn, Isaiah said finally, not moving his hand. You want to know why I stayed in the force after 15 years of fighting the same battles Kevin lost? Lily nodded. Isaiah stared out the cafe window, watching afternoon shadows stretch across the university quad. Students walked by in groups, backpacks slung over shoulders, the future bright and uncompromised in their faces. My father was Sergeant Robert Brooks, 22 years on the force, died in the line of duty when I was 16. He was investigating a corruption ring within his own precinct, officers taking money from drug dealers, planting evidence, the whole ugly mess. He paused, the memory still sharp after all these years. The night he was killed, he came home and told my mother he was close to breaking the case wide open. Said he had enough evidence to bring down 6 officers and clean up the whole district. He was excited, proud that he could make a difference from the inside. What happened? Traffic stop gone wrong. According to the official report, Routine patrol, suspect opened fire, father died heroically in the line of duty, full honors funeral, his name on the memorial wall, my family receiving the flag and the department's deepest condolences. Lily could hear the bitterness creeping into his voice. But you don't believe the official report. The corruption investigation died with him. Files went missing, witnesses suddenly couldn't remember what they'd told him, and the drug operation he'd been tracking expanded into 3 more precincts within a year. Isaiah's grip on her hand tightened. I was 16 years old, and I knew they'd killed him for trying to do the right thing. So why join the force at all? Why not become a lawyer, a journalist, anything else? Isaiah was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a decision made in grief and tempered by decades of hard experience. Because running away would have meant his death was meaningless. Because someone has to fight the system from the inside, and I was his son. Because he looked directly at her, vulnerably replacing the careful control he usually maintained. Because I was angry, and I wanted to prove that not all cops were corrupt, that some of us could be the change we claimed to serve. And has it worked? 15 years of fighting from the inside? Isaiah's laugh was rueful. Ask me that question 3 days ago, and I would have said yes. I made commander, earned the respect of good officers, built cases against the bad ones. I thought I was winning. And now? Now I've experienced the system from the other side. I've felt the handcuffs, sat in the holding cell, watched officers I trained dismiss my humanity because of my skin color. He turned his hand palm up beneath hers, fingers intertwining. Now I know that all my rank and authority and good intentions didn't protect me for even one night when I was just another black man at a gas station. The confession hung between them, raw and honest in a way that made Lily's chest ache for him. But you're still here, she said softly. Still fighting. Still fighting, he agreed. The difference is now I know what I'm really up against, and I know I can't do it alone. Their eyes met across the small table, and Lily felt something shift in the space between them. This wasn't just about justice anymore, or professional partnership, or even their shared trauma with the system. This was about 2 wounded people recognizing something healing in each other. Isaiah, she said quietly, what are we doing here? Really? He was quiet for a moment, thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that was definitely not professional. I think we're saving each other, he said finally. You gave me hope when I thought I'd lost it. And maybe I can give you a reason to believe in justice again. Is that what this is? Justice? I think this is bigger than justice, Isaiah said, voice dropping to almost a whisper. I think this might be love. Unexpected, impossible, completely inappropriate timing, but love. The word hung in the air between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross so soon. Lily felt her heart racing, the careful walls she'd built around her cynicism crumbling under the weight of his honesty. Isaiah, I know it's crazy, he continued, words tumbling out now that he'd started. I know we barely know each other, that the circumstances are completely insane, that you deserve someone without the weight of an entire police department on his shoulders. But when I look at you, I see someone who chose courage over safety, truth over convenience. When I'm with you, I remember why I became a cop in the first place, not for the badge or the authority, but to protect people who can't protect themselves. Lily felt tears threatening. You want to know what I see when I look at you? What? I see a man who spent the night in jail for the crime of existing while black and still showed up the next morning to do a job that's probably going to destroy him. I see someone who could use his new position to get revenge but chooses reform instead. I see, she paused, gathering courage. I see the man Kevin could have been if the system hadn't broken him, and I see hope that maybe it's not too late to fix things. Isaiah's free hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Lily, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Anything. Are you sure you want this? Not just the investigation or the reform work, but this us, because once we cross this line, there's no going back. You'll be the police chief's girlfriend, which means every decision I make will reflect on you, every enemy I make will target you, every mistake I make will hurt you too. Lily leaned into his touch, feeling safer than she had in years despite the danger he was describing. Isaiah Brooks, she said, voice strong despite her tears, I've been playing it safe my whole life, safe job, safe apartment, safe distance from anything that might hurt me, and you know what all that safety got me? A brother who can't trust the world, parents who've given up on their American dream, and a front-row seat to injustice I was too afraid to fight. She turned her head to press a kiss to his palm. I don't want safe anymore. I want brave. I want to stand beside the man who's going to change everything, even if it's terrifying, especially if it's terrifying. Isaiah felt something fundamental shift in his chest, the last of his careful isolation cracking open to make room for this impossible perfect woman who saw hope where others saw only problems. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He leaned across the table, and she met him halfway, their first kiss tasting of coffee and possibility, and the kind of love that changes everything it touches. When they broke apart, Isaiah rested his forehead against hers. So what do we do now? Now we go change the world, Lily said, smiling through her tears. Together. Outside Maya's cafe, the late afternoon sun painted everything golden, and for the first time in years, both Isaiah and Lily felt like the future held more promise than peril. They were wrong about that, but they were right about each other. And sometimes that's enough to start a revolution. 2 weeks into Isaiah's tenure as police chief, the internal affairs investigation reached its conclusion. Detective Santos laid the final report on his desk with the satisfaction of someone who'd built an airtight case. Officers Martinez and Thompson violated departmental policies on racial profiling, failure to properly investigate suspect claims, and excessive use of authority, she announced. Ms. Chen's video evidence, combined with witness testimony from the gas station clerk and inconsistencies in their incident reports, makes this a clear-cut case of misconduct. Isaiah read through the recommendations in silence. Suspension without pay, mandatory bias training, formal reprimands that would follow them for the rest of their careers. It was justice, but it felt hollow somehow, bureaucratic consequences for soul-deep problems. What's their response? He asked. Their union rep is pushing for reduced penalties, claiming they acted within reasonable suspicion protocols. Martinez seems genuinely remorseful, but Santos shook her head. Thompson still insists he'd do the same thing again, given identical circumstances. That evening, Isaiah sat across from Lily at her kitchen table, the case file spread between them like a roadmap through institutional failure. She'd made dinner, something that smelled of ginger and garlic and felt like home, but neither of them had much appetite. You could throw the book at them, Lily said, turning pages in the report. Public termination, criminal charges for false arrest, the video evidence would support it. I could. Isaiah agreed, but his voice carried no satisfaction. The question is whether that would actually change anything. Lily looked up from the file. Over the past 2 weeks, she'd learned to read the subtle shifts in his expression. Right now, he wasn't thinking like a police chief seeking vengeance, he was thinking like a man trying to heal a broken system. What are you considering? Isaiah leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. Martinez has been on the force for 8 years, clean record before this, good evaluations, no complaints. I think he can be taught, given the right intervention. And Thompson? Thompson's a different problem. 15 years on the force, 3 previous complaints that were dismissed on technicalities. He doesn't think he did anything wrong because the system has been rewarding this behavior his entire career. Lily reached across the table, taking his hand. The gesture had become natural over the past 2 weeks, small touches that anchored them both when the weight of change felt overwhelming. So what does justice look like when you're trying to heal instead of just punish? Isaiah smiled at her phrasing. This was what he'd fallen in love with, her ability to see the bigger picture, to ask the questions that mattered most. For Martinez, suspension, retraining and reassignment to community policing in the neighborhoods he profiled. Let him work directly with the people he misjudged, build relationships instead of barriers. And Thompson? Early retirement, a chance to leave with some dignity intact before his attitude infects more officers. If he refuses, Isaiah's expression hardened slightly, then we go with full disciplinary action, including criminal charges. Lily nodded, understanding the delicate balance he was trying to strike. You're gambling that mercy can be more effective than punishment. I'm gambling that people can change if they're given the right incentives and consequences. He lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. You changed me after all. How did I change you? You reminded me that this job isn't about the badge or the authority, it's about the people we serve. Before I met you, I was so focused on climbing the ranks, on proving I belonged in leadership, that I'd forgotten why any of it mattered. The tenderness in his voice made Lily's chest tighten with emotion. And what matters now? Making sure no other family goes through what yours did. Making sure no other officer has to experience what I did. Creating a department that protects and serves everyone, not just the people who look like us or live in the right neighborhoods. They abandoned the case files after that, moving to the couch where Isaiah could hold her properly. Lily curled against his side, her head on his shoulder, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Isaiah? Are you happy? Really happy, not just professionally satisfied? He was quiet for so long that Lily lifted her head to look at him. When their eyes met, she saw something she'd never seen before, pure, uncomplicated joy. I didn't know I could be, he said quietly. For 15 years I've been fighting so hard just to survive in this system that I forgot what it felt like to actually live in my own life. And now? Now I wake up thinking about you. I end each day wanting to tell you about the good things that happened, the small victories, the moments when I actually feel like we're making progress. You've given me back my faith in humanity, Lily. She kissed him then, soft and lingering, tasting the truth in his words. When they broke apart, she stayed close, their foreheads touching. You've given me back my faith in justice, she whispered. I thought the system was unfixable, that good people couldn't make a difference. But watching you work, seeing how carefully you handle each case, how much you care about getting it right, you've shown me that reform is possible. We've shown each other, Isaiah corrected. I couldn't do this alone. It was true. Over the past 2 weeks, Lily had become more than his girlfriend. She'd become his conscience, his sounding board, his reminder of why the work mattered. She attended community meetings with him, helped him understand the perspectives of people who'd been failed by the system, offered insights that his law enforcement training had never provided. I love you, he said, the words still new enough to feel miraculous every time he spoke them. I love you too, she replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The next morning brought news that validated Isaiah's approach to justice. Officer Martinez had requested a meeting, arriving at headquarters with his union representative, but also with something Isaiah hadn't expected: genuine contrition. Chief Brooks, Martinez said, his voice thick with emotion. I want to apologize, not because my lawyer told me to, not because it might reduce my punishment, but because I was wrong. I was completely inexcusably wrong. Isaiah gestured for him to sit, maintaining the professional composure that came naturally now, but studying Martinez's face for signs of authenticity. What changed your mind, officer? I went home that night and told my wife what happened. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me, like I'd become someone she couldn't love. Martinez's hands shook slightly as he continued. My son is 8 years old, Chief. He's mixed race. My wife is black. When I realized that in 10 years, some officer might look at my boy and see a threat instead of a child. His voice broke, and Isaiah felt something loosen in his chest. This was why he'd chosen mercy over vengeance, because people could change when they were forced to confront the human cost of their assumptions. What are you asking for, Martinez? A chance to do better. Accept whatever punishment you think is fair, but please don't end my career. Let me learn how to be the kind of officer my son can be proud of. Isaiah was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 15 years of fighting for this exact moment, when an officer chose growth over defensiveness, learning over pride. 60 days suspension without pay. Mandatory bias training with community leaders. When you return, you'll be assigned to the youth outreach program in the neighborhoods you profiled. You'll spend the next 2 years building relationships with the families you might have torn apart. Martinez nodded eagerly. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, officer. Thank me in 2 years, when you can look at your son and honestly say you're making the community safer for him. That afternoon, Isaiah called Lily from his office, unable to contain his excitement. Martinez wants to change, he said without preamble. Real change, not just damage control. How do you know? Because he talked about his son. When officers start seeing the community as their own family instead of an enemy to be controlled, that's when real reform begins. Lily smiled, hearing the hope in his voice. And Thompson took early retirement this morning. 60% pension, clean record, chance to start over somewhere else. Sometimes the best justice is just removing the problem before it spreads. I'm proud of you, Lily said, and Isaiah felt the words settle in his chest like a blessing. Meet me for lunch? I want to celebrate, and I want to do it with you. Where? Maya's Cafe, where it all started. An hour later, they sat at the same corner table where they'd first confessed their love, sharing a piece of chocolate cake, and talking about the future with the optimism of people who'd seen their faith in justice restored. What happens next? Lily asked, fork poised over the cake. Next, we tackle the bigger problems. Training reform, community policing initiatives, accountability measures that can't be dismissed on technicalities. Isaiah's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm she'd learned to love. I want to create a model that other departments can follow, real change, not just cosmetic improvements. If you want to be part of it. I know you have your nursing career, your own life, but, he reached for her hand. I can't imagine doing this without you. You see things I miss, ask questions I don't think to ask. You make me better at this job. Lily felt her heart swell with possibility. Are you offering me a position? I'm offering you a partnership in the truest sense. Help me build something that would have protected Kevin, that will protect every Kevin who comes after him. She leaned across the table and kissed him, tasting chocolate and promise and the sweetness of work that mattered. Yes, she said, against his lips. Yes to all of it. As they walked back to the precinct together, hands intertwined, both of them felt the rare satisfaction of being exactly where they belonged, doing exactly the work they were meant to do, with exactly the person they were meant to love. It was a perfect moment of peace and possibility. Neither of them knew it would be their last one for a very long time. The first crack in their perfect world came disguised as a phone call at 3:17 a.m. Isaiah jolted awake in Lily's bed, muscle memory from 15 years of middle-of-the-night emergencies bringing him instantly alert. Brooks. Chief. We have a situation. Detective Santos' voice was tight with controlled panic. Officer-involved shooting in the Riverside district. Community is gathering and it's getting tense fast. Isaiah was already reaching for his clothes. Casualties? 17-year-old kid, Marcus Williams, shot during a traffic stop. He's in critical condition at Metro General. The name hit Isaiah like a physical blow. Marcus Williams, honor student, basketball player, younger brother of Damian Williams, who ran the community center where Isaiah had been building relationships for the past month. What happened? Officers claim he reached for something during the stop, turned out to be his phone, trying to call his mother. Santos paused. Chief, the officers involved are Rodriguez and Fleming. Isaiah closed his eyes. Rodriguez was a good cop, someone he'd been counting on to model the new approach to policing. If Rodriguez was involved, the situation was more complicated than a simple case of misconduct. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. As he hung up, Lily stirred beside him, instantly awake with the alertness of someone who'd worked too many emergency shifts. "What's wrong?" "Officer involved shooting. A kid." Isaiah's voice was flat, professional, but Lily could see the pain in his shoulders, the way his hands shook slightly as he buttoned his shirt. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No, stay here, stay safe. This is going to be ugly." But Lily was already getting dressed. "That kid's going to end up at Metro General. That's my hospital, Isaiah. Those are my colleagues who'll be trying to save him." They drove in silence through the empty pre-dawn streets, both lost in their own fears about what they'd find. The Riverside district was already buzzing with activity, patrol cars, news vans, and growing clusters of community members demanding answers. The scene was a study in controlled chaos. Isaiah surveyed the situation with the tactical awareness that had kept him alive for 15 years, noting the positioning of officers, the mood of the crowd, the delicate balance between justified anger and potential violence. "Chief Brooks." Damian Williams pushed through the police line, his face a mask of raw fury and heartbreak. "They shot my baby brother. He was coming home from work, and they shot him for being black in his own neighborhood." Isaiah felt every eye in the crowd turn toward him. The black police chief who'd promised change, now faced with the same old story of a young life hanging in the balance because of split-second decisions made through the lens of racial bias. "Damian, I need you to help me keep this calm until we know exactly what happened." "Calm." Damian's voice cracked with emotion. "My 17-year-old brother is fighting for his life because your officers saw a threat instead of a kid. You want me to be calm about that?" The crowd pressed closer, and Isaiah could feel the weight of their expectations, their hope that he would be different, better, that his presence in leadership would mean stories like Marcus's couldn't happen anymore. "We will investigate this fully," Isaiah said, his voice carrying over the murmur of the crowd. "Every aspect of this incident will be reviewed, and if policies were violated, there will be consequences." "Consequences?" An older woman stepped forward, her voice thick with decades of disappointment. "Just like the consequences for the officers who arrested you. A slap on the wrist and business as usual." The words hit Isaiah like a slap. In trying to model mercy and rehabilitation with Martinez and Thompson, had he sent the message that misconduct would be tolerated, that justice was negotiable? By dawn, the situation had spiraled beyond Isaiah's control. The shooting had awakened every grievance, every broken promise, every moment when the community had been asked to trust a system that consistently failed them. Protesters filled the streets, demanding Isaiah's resignation, calling him a sellout, a token chief put in place to make the department look progressive while nothing actually changed. The breaking point came during the afternoon press conference. Isaiah stood at the podium, facing a room full of hostile reporters and community leaders, trying to balance transparency with the need to protect the integrity of an ongoing investigation. Chief Brooks called out Janet Morrison from Channel 7 News. "Community leaders are saying your lenient response to the Martinez-Thompson incident sent a message that racial profiling would be tolerated. How do you respond to claims that your leadership style enabled last night's shooting?" The question was a trap, beautifully designed to make any answer sound like an admission of guilt. Isaiah felt the familiar weight of being judged not just as a police chief, but as a black man whose every decision would be scrutinized for signs of betrayal to his community or his profession. Every case is evaluated individually based on evidence and circumstances, he replied carefully. I stand by the decision-making process that led to appropriate consequences for Officers Martinez and Thompson. Appropriate? Another reporter jumped in. A paid vacation and some sensitivity training for racially profiling their own chief? The Fraternal Order of Police is saying you're too soft to lead, while community activists are calling you a puppet of the system. How can you effectively lead when neither side trusts your judgment? Isaiah felt something crack inside his chest. The careful balance he'd been maintaining between justice and mercy, between reform and stability, between his identity as a black man and his role as a police chief. The press conference ended badly, with Isaiah deflecting questions he couldn't answer and making promises he wasn't sure he could keep. As he walked back to his office, he could hear the chants from the street. Brooks must go. Justice, not excuses. That evening Lily found him in his apartment, still in his dress uniform, staring at the commendations on his wall like they belonged to someone else. "How's Marcus?" he asked, without turning around. "Stable. The surgery went well, but he's got a long recovery ahead of him." Lily sat on the couch, studying his rigid posture. "Isaiah, you need to know the staff at the hospital are talking. About you, about us, about whether you can actually change anything." "What are they saying?" "Some think you're trying to do too much too fast, others think you're not doing enough. Everyone has an opinion about how you should handle this case." She paused. "And they're all asking about me, about whether I have influence over your decisions, whether our relationship compromises your objectivity." Isaiah finally turned, and Lily saw exhaustion etched in every line of his face. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not the right person for this job." "Don't say that." "Why not? Look at what's happened, Lily. I've been chief for a month, and already we have a kid in the hospital, the community calling for my head, and the officers questioning my authority. Maybe I was naive to think I could change 15 years of institutional problems with good intentions and careful politics." Lily stood, moving toward him, but Isaiah stepped back. Don't try to fix this with optimism and faith in the process. This isn't something we can heal with love and determination." The rejection stung, but Lily pushed forward anyway. "So what, you're just giving up? You're going to let one incident destroy everything we've built?" "Everything we've built?" Isaiah's voice rose for the first time since she'd known him. "What exactly have we built, Lily? A relationship based on shared trauma? A reform program that looks good on paper but crumbles the first time it faces real pressure? A partnership that's making both of us targets?" "Isaiah, no, listen, really listen. The community thinks I'm a sellout because I didn't destroy Martinez and Thompson. The department thinks I'm weak because I showed mercy instead of authority. The media thinks I'm incompetent because I can't magically solve problems that have existed for decades. And you," he paused, pain flashing across his face, "you're getting dragged into all of it because you had the misfortune of falling in love with someone who thought he could change the world." "I chose this," Lily said fiercely. "I chose you. I chose this work. I chose to believe that change was possible. Don't you dare try to protect me by pushing me away." "It's not protection, it's reality. Look at what happened to Marcus Williams. Look at the community reaction. Look at how quickly everything we've worked for is falling apart." Isaiah sank into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 38 years. "Maybe the system can't be reformed. Maybe it can only be endured." Lily felt something break in her chest, not just at his words, but at the defeat in his voice, the way he'd retreated from the man who'd promised to change the world. "So that's it? One crisis and you're ready to abandon everything? What about Kevin? What about all the other kids like Marcus? What about the promise you made to create a department that protects everyone?" "Promises are easy to make when you don't understand the cost," Isaiah said quietly. "The cost isn't just my career or my reputation. It's your safety, your career, your family's security. It's watching 17-year-olds get shot, despite all my good intentions. It's realizing that maybe I'm not strong enough to carry the weight of everyone's expectations. You're not supposed to carry it alone, Lily said, tears threatening. That's what partnership means. That's what love means. Love isn't enough, Isaiah replied, and the words fell between them like stones. Love doesn't stop bullets. Love doesn't change centuries of systemic racism. Love doesn't protect you from the consequences of being associated with someone who's failing as publicly as I am. Lily stared at him for a long moment, seeing a stranger in the place of the man who'd held her hand and promised they'd change the world together. I don't know who you are right now, she said quietly. The Isaiah I fell in love with wouldn't abandon his principles the first time they were tested. He wouldn't push away the people trying to help him. He wouldn't give up on justice because it turned out to be harder than he expected. Maybe the Isaiah you fell in love with was an illusion. The words hit Lily like a physical blow, and she felt something fundamental shift in her chest, love transforming into something harder, more brittle. Maybe he was, she said, grabbing her purse. The man I loved believed that mercy could be stronger than vengeance, that reform could happen from within, that two broken people could heal each other and their community. If that man was an illusion, then I guess we both wasted our time. She paused at the door, giving him one last chance to call her back, to remember who they'd been together, who they could still be. Isaiah remained silent, staring at his hands. When you find him again, Lily said softly, the man who believed change was possible, call me. Until then, figure out who you want to be when this crisis passes, because it will pass, Isaiah. The question is whether you'll still be standing when it does. The door closed behind her with quiet finality, leaving Isaiah alone with his doubts, his failures, and the terrible silence of a man who'd pushed away the one person who still believed he could be better than his worst moments. Outside, the protests continued, voices calling for justice, for change, for someone to finally make the promises real. But inside his apartment, Isaiah heard only the echo of Lily's footsteps walking away, and wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. For 3 days, Isaiah existed in a gray space between functioning and falling apart. He went through the motions: morning briefings, community meetings, press conferences filled with careful non-answers, while the investigation into Marcus Williams' shooting continued. But inside, he felt hollow, carved out by his own words to Lily and the terrible possibility that maybe he really wasn't strong enough for this job. The investigation findings landed on his desk Thursday morning like a final judgment. Detective Santos placed the thick folder in front of him with the weariness of someone who'd worked 48 straight hours chasing the truth. Rodriguez followed protocol, she said without preamble. Marcus Williams matched the description of an armed robbery suspect, and when he reached into his jacket during the traffic stop, Rodriguez believed he was drawing a weapon. Isaiah opened the file, scanning the detailed timeline, witness statements, and forensic evidence. Everything supported Rodriguez's account, a split-second decision made under circumstances that would have challenged any officer. And Fleming? Backup officer arrived after the shooting. Clean. Santos sat heavily in the chair across from his desk. Chief, I've been doing this for 12 years, and this is exactly the kind of case that tears departments apart. Technically justified, morally devastating, and impossible to explain to a community that's tired of burying their children. Isaiah nodded, staring at the crime scene photos. Marcus Williams, honor student, basketball player, 17 years old, lying on asphalt because he'd reached for his phone instead of keeping his hands visible. No malice, no criminality, just a young man who'd made a movement that cost him everything. What's the community saying? They want Rodriguez charged with manslaughter. They want you to publicly condemn the shooting. They want— Santos paused. They want you to choose a side, Chief. Either you're with the officers who were following training and protocol, or you're with the community demanding justice for Marcus. And if I refuse to pick a side? Then everyone decides you're weak, and the department falls apart from both directions. After Santos left, Isaiah sat alone with the file, the weight of Solomon's choice pressing down on his shoulders. Charge a good officer for following his training, or tell a grieving family that their son's death was justified. Reform the system or protect the officers working within it. Be the black man his community expected, or the police chief his department needed. His phone buzzed with a text from Damian Williams. Marcus is awake. He's asking to see you. Metro General Hospital felt like a place suspended between hope and heartbreak. Isaiah walked through corridors filled with the smell of antiseptic and the weight of human fragility, past rooms where families waited for miracles or prepared for goodbyes. Marcus Williams looked impossibly young in the hospital bed, his dark skin ashen against the white sheets, machines monitoring the rhythm of a life that had come so close to ending. When he saw Isaiah enter, he struggled to sit up straighter. "Chief Brooks." "Just Isaiah, son. How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot," Marcus said with a weak smile that reminded Isaiah painfully of his own youth, his own ability to find humor in the darkest moments. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid filling the space between them. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay. When Officer Rodriguez told you to keep your hands visible, why did you reach for your phone?" Marcus looked away, shame flickering across his young face. "My mom always told me if I ever got pulled over, call her immediately. She said having a witness on the phone might keep me safe." His voice cracked slightly. "I was scared, and I just wanted my mom to know where I was." Isaiah felt something break in his chest, not just at the tragedy of the situation, but at the heartbreaking logic of a 17-year-old boy who'd been taught to fear the police, meant to protect him. "I'm sorry this happened to you, Marcus. I'm sorry you live in a world where you have to be afraid of officers like me. You're different though. That's what Damian says you actually care about changing things." "Do you believe that?" Marcus studied Isaiah's face for a long moment, and in his eyes Isaiah saw the kind of wisdom that came from facing mortality at 17. "I think you want to be different. Question is whether you're brave enough to actually do it when it's hard." The words hit Isaiah like a physical blow, because they echoed exactly what Lily had said 3 days ago, what his father would have said, what he'd been too afraid to admit to himself. "What would brave look like to you, son?" "Brave would be telling the truth, even when it hurts everybody. Brave would be changing the system that taught Officer Rodriguez to see me as a threat instead of a kid. Brave would be—" Marcus paused, struggling with the words. "Brave would be making sure this never happens to anybody else, even if it costs you everything." That evening, Isaiah found himself at his father's grave for the first time in 2 years. The headstone was simple: Sergeant Robert Brooks, 1952 to 1991. He served with honor. No mention of the corruption investigation that had killed him, no acknowledgement of the courage that had cost him his life. "I don't know what to do, Pops," Isaiah said to the quiet stone. "I thought I could change things from the inside, but maybe the system is too strong, maybe it changes us instead of us changing it." The cemetery was peaceful in the fading light, and Isaiah could almost hear his father's voice. "The system only wins if you let it, son. Question is, what are you made of when everything's on the line?" Isaiah pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "Lily, don't hang up, please." There was a long pause, and when she spoke her voice was careful, guarded. "What do you want, Isaiah?" "I want to tell you I was wrong. About everything. About love not being enough, about not being strong enough, about having to choose between the job and doing what's right." "Are you wrong?" "Yeah. Completely, devastatingly wrong." Isaiah took a shaky breath. "I let fear make me weak. I let the pressure turn me into someone I didn't recognize. I pushed away the one person who believed I could be better than my worst moments. And now? Now I remember who I am, who my father raised me to be, who you helped me become." His voice grew stronger. "I'm Robert Brooks's son. I'm the man who promised to change the world with the woman he loves. And I'm the police chief who's about to make a decision that's going to cost me everything but my integrity." Lily was quiet for so long that Isaiah thought she'd hung up. "What decision?" "I'm going to tell the truth. All of it. About the investigation, about the systemic problems that made Marcus's shooting inevitable, about the changes that need to happen even if they destroy my career. And then I'm going to ask the woman I love to forgive me for being human enough to break and strong enough to put myself back together." "Isaiah, I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you, pushed you away when you were trying to help, but if you can find it in your heart to forgive me, I'd like to try again, not just us, but everything. The reform work, the community healing, the impossible dream of justice that actually serves everyone." When Lily spoke, her voice was thick with tears. "Where are you?" "At my father's grave, trying to remember what courage looks like." "Stay there. I'm coming." 20 minutes later, Lily found him sitting on the grass next to Robert Brooks' headstone, still in his dress uniform but looking more like the man she'd fallen in love with than he had in days. "Hi," she said softly, settling beside him. "Hi yourself." Isaiah reached for her hand, relief flooding through him when she didn't pull away. "I missed you." "I missed you too, but Isaiah, I need you to understand something. I can't go through that again. I can't watch you break and push me away every time things get difficult. If we're going to do this, we do it together, all of it. The good decisions and the bad ones, the victories and the failures. Together," Isaiah agreed, lifting their joined hands to his lips. "Always together. So what's the plan?" Isaiah smiled, and for the first time in days, it reached his eyes. "Tomorrow morning I'm calling a press conference. I'm going to announce the investigation results, accept responsibility for the systemic failures that led to Marcus's shooting, and outline a comprehensive reform plan that will probably get me fired within a week. And after that? After that, we figure out how to change the world from whatever position we find ourselves in. Because you were right, love might not be enough on its own, but love combined with courage, with truth, with the absolute refusal to accept injustice, that might actually be unstoppable." Lily leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, and they sat together in the gathering darkness, two people who'd found each other through shared trauma and chosen each other through shared hope. "Isaiah, yeah? Your father would be proud." Isaiah looked at the simple headstone, at the man whose courage had cost him everything but whose legacy had shaped a son who was finally ready to follow in his footsteps. "I hope so," he said quietly. "I really hope so." Above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, and for the first time in days, the future felt like something worth fighting for. What do you think takes more courage, maintaining the status quo or risking everything to create change? Share your thoughts as we approach the final chapter of Isaiah and Lily's story. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m., but Isaiah arrived at headquarters at dawn. He wanted these last few hours in the office that had represented the pinnacle of his career, knowing that by noon he'd likely be clearing out his desk. Lily met him in the parking lot, carrying 2 cups of coffee and the kind of quiet strength that had first drawn him to her. She'd taken the day off from the hospital, choosing to stand beside him regardless of the consequences. "Ready?" she asked, handing him the coffee. "No," Isaiah said honestly. "But sometimes ready is a luxury we can't afford." They walked through the precinct together, past officers who offered tentative nods and uncertain smiles. Word had already leaked about the press conference. The entire department buzzed with speculation about what their chief might say, what it might mean for their jobs, their futures. Detective Santos was waiting in Isaiah's office with the final investigation report, and something he hadn't expected, a small crowd of officers. "Chief." Rodriguez stepped forward, his face etched with the weight of the past week. "We heard about the press conference. We wanted you to know whatever you decide to say about the shooting, about the department, about the changes that need to happen. We support you." Isaiah looked around the room at faces he'd worked with for years. Martinez was there, the officer he'd shown mercy to who'd since become one of his strongest advocates for reform. Captain Rodriguez, who'd mentored him through the early years. Detective Santos, who'd built the case that had started everything. Even some of the younger officers, the ones who'd joined the force because they believed in the possibility of change. "You might not feel that way after you hear what I have to say," Isaiah warned. "Chief," Martinez said quietly, "some of us have been waiting our whole careers for a leader who'd choose truth over politics. Don't stop now because it's scary." The press room was packed beyond capacity. Reporters filled every seat, cameras lined the walls, and community leaders stood along the back, their faces reflecting the complex mix of hope and skepticism that had defined Isaiah's tenure. Damian Williams sat in the front row, Marcus beside him in a wheelchair, still recovering but determined to be present. The sight of the young man, alive, healing, choosing to be here, gave Isaiah the final push of courage he needed. "Good morning," Isaiah began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. "I called this press conference to share the findings of our investigation into the officer-involved shooting of Marcus Williams, and to discuss the systemic changes our department must make to prevent similar tragedies." He opened the file, looking down at words he'd memorized, then closed it again and spoke from his heart. "The investigation shows that Officer Rodriguez acted within departmental protocol when he shot Marcus Williams. He followed his training, responded to perceived threat indicators, and made a split-second decision under circumstances that would challenge any officer. By the technical standards of police procedure, his actions were justified." A murmur rippled through the crowd, disappointment from community members, relief from officers. However, Isaiah continued, his voice growing stronger, "Justified does not mean acceptable, and protocol does not mean right." The murmur died into complete silence. Marcus Williams was shot because he reached for his phone to call his mother. He reached for his phone because his mother had taught him that having a witness on the line might keep him safe during a police encounter. Think about that for a moment. A 17-year-old honor student was so afraid of police officers that his survival strategy was to immediately call for help. Isaiah's eyes found Marcus in the crowd, drawing strength from the young man's steady gaze. "This is not Officer Rodriguez's failure alone. This is not even our department's failure alone. This is the failure of a system that has taught our officers to see threat before humanity, that has taught our community to fear those sworn to protect them, that has created a cycle of mistrust so deep that good people on both sides make decisions that nearly cost a young man his life." "What are you saying, Chief Brooks?" called out Janet Morrison from Channel 7. "I'm saying that Marcus Williams was shot not because of one officer's mistake, but because of decades of institutional failures that I, as the leader of this department, must take responsibility for addressing." Isaiah's voice carried the weight of 15 years of experience and a lifetime of understanding what it meant to be black in America. "Officer Rodriguez will not face criminal charges because he broke no laws. But he will participate in our new community immersion program, working directly with families in the neighborhoods he patrols, building relationships that make split-second judgments unnecessary. He will help us rewrite training protocols that prioritize de-escalation over force, communication over control." The crowd was listening intently now, sensing something different in Isaiah's approach. But individual accountability is not enough. Today I am announcing a comprehensive reform initiative that will transform how this department operates. We will implement mandatory bias training developed in partnership with community leaders. We will establish citizen oversight panels with real authority to investigate misconduct. We will require officers to live in the communities they serve, to see the people they protect as neighbors, not strangers. Isaiah paused, knowing his next words would likely end his career. And if the city council, the mayor, or the police union refuses to support these reforms, if they choose politics over progress, protection over justice, then I will resign my position and work for change from outside this institution. Because I will not be the chief who presides over another Marcus Williams, another family torn apart by a system too afraid to admit its failures. The room erupted in questions, but Isaiah held up his hand for silence. I have one more thing to say. 2 months ago I was arrested by 2 of my own officers at a gas station, handcuffed and humiliated because they could not see past the color of my skin to recognize my humanity. A courageous woman named Lily Chen witnessed that arrest, recorded it, and chose to come forward when staying silent would have been easier. Isaiah's eyes found Lily in the crowd, seeing tears on her cheeks and love in her expression. Miss Chen taught me that real change requires real courage, not the courage to maintain the status quo, but the courage to demand better even when the cost is everything you've worked for. She taught me that love is not a weakness that makes us vulnerable, but a strength that makes us unstoppable when we fight for what's right. He stepped away from the podium, moving closer to the crowd, speaking directly to the people whose trust he was asking for. To the Williams family, to Marcus, I am profoundly sorry for what happened to you. You deserved better from this department, from this system, from me. I cannot undo the harm that was done, but I can promise that your pain will not be in vain if you give us the chance to prove that change is possible. To my officers, I know this is difficult. I know change is scary, that admitting our failures feels like betrayal of everything you've dedicated your lives to, but you became cops to serve and protect, not to be feared and avoided. Help me build a department that honors that calling. To this community, I know your trust has been broken too many times to count. I know promises from police chiefs are cheap, and actions are what matter. Judge me not by what I say today, but by what this department looks like 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. Isaiah returned to the podium for his final words. Real justice is not about punishment, it's about transformation. Real strength is not about power, it's about service. Real change is not about quick fixes, it's about the daily choice to be better than we were yesterday. He looked directly into the cameras, speaking to the entire city. I am Isaiah Brooks, son of Sergeant Robert Brooks, who died trying to root out corruption in this department. I am a black man who has experienced both sides of the badge. I am a police chief who refuses to choose between serving my community and leading my officers. And I am someone who believes that love, for justice, for truth, for each other is the only force powerful enough to heal what seems impossible to fix. Thank you. The aftermath was swift and decisive. By 2 p.m., the mayor's office had called an emergency meeting. The police union president demanded Isaiah's immediate resignation. Community leaders praised his honesty while questioning whether words would translate to action. The media declared it either the most courageous press conference in departmental history or the most damaging depending on their editorial stance. Isaiah sat in his office, cleaning out his desk while he waited for the inevitable summons to surrender his badge. The reforms he'd announced were comprehensive and necessary, but they would take time, political will, and resources the city might not be willing to provide. A knock at his door interrupted his packing. He looked up to see Marcus Williams, moving slowly but steadily without his wheelchair. "Shouldn't you be resting?" Isaiah asked. "Probably. But I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "I'm about to be the former police chief who couldn't prevent you from getting shot." Marcus sat carefully in the chair across from Isaiah's desk, his young face serious. "You did something today that nobody expected. You told the truth, not the comfortable truth that makes everyone feel better, but the hard truth that makes people angry because they know something has to change. Truth doesn't bring back the weeks of your life you lost in this hospital. No, but it might save some other kid from going through what I did." Marcus leaned forward, "Chief Isaiah, my brother Damien wants to work with you. On the community immersion program, the training reforms, all of it, whether you're chief or not." Isaiah felt something lift in his chest. He said that? Said it's time to stop complaining about the system and start fixing it. Said you showed him today that there are still people in uniform who remember what justice is supposed to look like. Before Isaiah could respond, Lily appeared in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's something happening outside you need to see." Isaiah and Marcus followed her to the window overlooking the front of the building. Below, a crowd had gathered, not protesters this time, but community members, officers, families, and activists, all holding signs reading "Support Chief Brooks and Real Reform Now." "They've been arriving since your press conference ended," Lily said. "Damien Williams started it, but it's grown to include everyone, people who want to see if you meant what you said." Isaiah's phone rang. "The mayor." "Brooks, get down here, now." "Sir, if you're calling to accept my resignation, I'm calling to tell you that my phone has been ringing off the hook since your press conference. Half the calls want you fired, the other half want you canonized. The city council is meeting in emergency session, and the governor's office is asking questions about federal oversight if we don't address these problems." Isaiah closed his eyes. "What does that mean for the reforms?" "It means you just forced everyone's hand, Chief. We can either support your initiatives and try to manage the change, or we can fire you and deal with federal intervention when the Justice Department decides we're not capable of policing ourselves. And you just bought yourself 6 months to prove that transformation is possible. Don't make me regret this, Brooks." The line went dead, and Isaiah stared at his phone in amazement. "What happened?" Lily asked. "I think we just won." 6 months later, Isaiah stood in the same gas station where everything had begun, but this time he wasn't alone. Officer Martinez was with him, along with 3 community members and 2 teenagers from the youth program they'd developed together. The gas station had become an unlikely symbol of transformation, not just of the department, but of the relationship between police and community. It hosted monthly meet-and-greet sessions, where officers and residents could interact outside of crisis situations. Chief Devon, the young clerk who'd been working the night of Isaiah's arrest, approached with a shy smile. "There's someone here who wants to meet you." A middle-aged black woman stepped forward, her expression mixing nervousness and determination. "Chief Brooks, I'm Janet Rodriguez, Officer Rodriguez's wife. I wanted to thank you." "Mrs. Rodriguez, you don't need to thank me for anything." "Yes, I do. When my husband shot that boy, he came home broken. He kept saying he'd followed protocol, done everything right, but he couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't look at our own children without seeing Marcus Williams' face." She paused, composing herself. "The community immersion program working with Damien Williams and the families, it saved him. It saved our marriage. It helped him remember why he became a cop in the first place." Isaiah felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came with reminders of how much individual lives mattered in the work they were doing. "How is he doing?" "Better. Different, but better. He tells me every day about the kids he's mentoring, the families he's getting to know. He's not just Officer Rodriguez anymore, he's Carlos, the guy who helps with homework at the community center, who knows everyone's names and stories." She smiled through her tears. "You gave him back his humanity, Chief. Thank you for that." After she left, Isaiah stood outside the gas station where his life had changed, where he'd experienced the system from the other side, where everything he thought he knew about justice had been stripped away and rebuilt. "Penny for your thoughts?" Lily said, appearing beside him with 2 cups of coffee, their ritual now, every time they came back to this place. "Just thinking about how much can change in 6 months. Good changes?" Isaiah looked around at the community members chatting easily with officers, at teenagers who no longer crossed the street when they saw a patrol car, at the slow but steady transformation of relationships that had been broken for generations. "Mostly good. Hard, but good. Any regrets? Isaiah considered the question seriously. The past 6 months had been the most difficult of his career: budget battles, political pressure, resistance from some officers, impatience from some community members, but they'd also been the most meaningful. Only one, he said finally. What's that? Isaiah turned to face her fully, reaching into his jacket pocket. I regret that it took me so long to ask the woman who changed my life, who stood by me through everything, who made me brave enough to choose love over fear, to marry me. He dropped to one knee right there, in front of the gas station where they'd both learned that sometimes the worst moments can become the beginning of the best ones. Lily Chen, will you marry me? The ring was simple, elegant, perfect. But more than that, it represented everything they'd built together: partnership in justice, faith in change, love that had been tested and proven unbreakable. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Yes, of course, yes. As they kissed, the small crowd that had gathered, officers and community members alike, erupted in cheers and applause. Someone started singing Amazing Grace, and others joined in, voices rising together in the evening air. Standing there surrounded by people who'd become family, Isaiah thought about his father's grave, about the man who'd died fighting corruption and never got to see the change he'd started, about Marcus Williams, who'd survived a shooting and chosen to be part of the solution, about love that had saved him when he'd lost faith in everything else. So Lily said, admiring her ring, "What's next for the future Mr. and Mrs. Brooks?" "Next we keep doing the work, keep fighting for justice, keep building bridges, keep proving that change is possible when people choose courage over comfort. And we love each other through all of it. The victories and the setbacks, the good days and the impossible ones." Lily stood on her toes to kiss him again. "I can think of worse ways to spend a lifetime." As they walked back to his car, Isaiah's phone buzzed with a text from Damian Williams. "Saw the news. Congratulations, Chief. Marcus wants to know if he can be in the wedding." Isaiah showed the text to Lily, and they both laughed, the kind of laughter that comes after tears, after struggle, after finding out that happy endings are possible even when they seem impossible. "Tell him yes," Lily said. "Tell him we'd be honored." 6 months ago, Isaiah Brooks had been arrested at a gas station, handcuffed and humiliated by officers who couldn't see past his skin color to recognize his humanity. Today he was the police chief who'd revolutionized a department, the man who'd chosen truth over politics, the partner who'd found love in the most unlikely circumstances. Tomorrow, he'd be the husband who woke up every morning next to the woman who'd taught him that real strength came not from power, but from the courage to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, to choose love even when the world seemed determined to choose fear. And someday, maybe next year, maybe in 5 years, maybe when their own children were old enough to understand, he'd tell them the story of how justice and love had saved each other, one choice at a time, one day at a time, one heart at a time. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibility, and anchored by the knowledge that together they could face anything. Together they could change the world.
If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Thank you for watching this story to the end.